I've never been one to set specific reading goals for myself, and I'm very much so a mood reader, so it's very hard for me to stick to a specific TBR or reading list because I tend to just go where the wind takes me. And because I read in this way, I've accidentally amassed a large TBR that I have not gotten to yet. And it's such a shame to see these books sit on my bookshelf unread. So I want to prioritize these books in 2025. I'm really excited about these books, and mostly the reason why I haven't picked them up yet is because my attention has gone elsewhere. I am very much a victim of book talk and reading the newest, greatest thing. So I want to take a step back and stop consuming as much new literature and go back to the books that I already have to ensure that I actually read them and enjoy them. And I'm excited about these titles. So I am hopeful that 2025 will be a really good reading year for me. And I'm excited to share these books with you. If any of these books pique your interest, perhaps we can discuss them together on this channel. But this is my TBR for 2025. Starting at the top with two books that I began reading in December and still haven't finished yet. I work full time, so it's very hard for me to read at an apt pace because most of the time I'm so mentally fatigued from work that I find myself doom scrolling, unfortunately. But I'm really trying to break that habit. And these two books are really fun to read so far. I am super excited about it, and especially The Secret History, which I feel like is a cult classic, especially in the dark academia realm. I fear that once I'm done reading The Secret History, it is going to become part of my personality because it is such a fun, moody, atmospheric read so far, and I understand why people really like it. I'm still not so far in, but already I feel sucked in by Donna Tartt's writing. It's just immediately so immersive, and it's been really fun so far. For those of you who don't know what The Secret History is about, which I find highly doubtful because this I feel like is one of the most recommended books on the internet, The Secret History is about a group of eccentric master's students who are under the direction of a really enigmatic professor, and they learn a new way of thinking through their studies that leads them down a very dark path. So I'm excited to finish this. I fear it may become part of my personality after I'm done. The other book that I'm currently reading is Notes of a Crocodile. This is a translated work, and I believe the author is Taiwanese. I will correct myself on screen if that is wrong, but this is kind of a meditation of journal entries about a sapphic relationship between these two women who are at college together, and it is so beautiful the way that it's written, the way that this book describes yearning and identity, especially when it comes to queer identity. I am really enjoying this book so far, but I think the issue I'm having with it is because it's not a chronological timeline and it's not marked really by chapters, it's really in this format of journal entries and meditations. And I think because the book takes that format, it's hard for me to continue picking it back up. I feel more drawn to this book, mostly because I have a sense of completion as the plot unfolds, but this one is still really, really good. I really want to finish it, and it's so beautiful. So highly recommend Notes of a Crocodile if you have not already read it. Moving forward to this gargantuan list of TBRs, a lot of these books are translated works, which I'm excited to read more of in 2025. And I'm really excited to expose myself to some of these authors, some of which I've read before, like Haruki Murakami, but others are completely new to me. And there's also a book of poetry on here. The first one is Earthlings by Sayaka Murata. The back blurb reads, Natsuki is a young girl who feels like she's been dropped into her family from an alien planet. Her best friend is a plush toy hedgehog named Pyut, and her only human friend is her cousin Yu. Natsuki and Yu spend their summers in the wild mountains of Nagano, dreaming of other worlds. When a terrible sequence of events threatens to part the children forever, they make a promise: survive, no matter what. Now Natsuki is grown, living a quiet life with her asexual husband, but dark shadows and societal pressure are pursuing her. Fleeing the suburbs for the mountains of her childhood, Natsuki prepares herself for a reunion with Yu, but will he still remember their promise, and will he help her keep it? Dreamlike, wonderful, Earthlings cements Murata's standing as a master chronicler of her own uncanny universe. This sounds weird. I feel like a lot of Japanese fiction, Japanese literature is quite surreal, so I'm excited to read Earthlings. This has been on my TBR for at least 2 years, so definitely prioritizing that in 2025. The next couple are by Kazuo Ishiguro, which is a prolific author on Book Talk, BookTube. The first title, The Buried Giant, the back blurb reads, "In post-Arthurian Britain, the wars that once raged between Saxons and the Britons have finally ceased. Axel and Beatrice, an elderly British couple, set off to visit their son, whom they haven't seen in years. And because a strange mist has caused mass amnesia throughout the land, they can scarcely remember anything about him. As they are joined on their journey by a Saxon warrior, his orphan charge, and an illustrious knight, Axel and Beatrice slowly begin to remember the dark and troubled past they all share. By turns savage, suspenseful, and intensely moving, The Buried Giant is a luminous meditation on the act of forgetting and the power of memory, an extraordinary tale of love, vengeance, and war." Sounds amazing. The Remains of the Day is a profoundly compelling portrait of the perfect English butler and of his fading insular world in post-war England. At the end of his 3 decades of service at Darlington Hall, Stevens embarks on a country drive during which he looks back over his career to reassure himself that he has served humanity by serving a great gentleman. But lurking in his memory are doubts about the true nature of Lord Darlington's greatness and graver doubts about his own faith in the man he served. Love. So, very excited. The next is the ever so ominous 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. Haruki Murakami and I have a very complicated relationship. He was my favorite author in high school, point blank period. I loved Haruki Murakami. When I first discovered Japanese fiction, specifically Haruki Murakami, when I was 16, 17, I feel like it broke my brain. It was so profound to me at the time that I overlooked a lot of the qualms that people have with Murakami's writing. And now that I'm older, I kind of took a break from Murakami specifically. A lot of the critique that I've seen circulating online about Murakami is the way that he writes women as kind of, boobs with legs that serve as a plot device or some sort of character development piece for his male main characters. Totally not something I agree with or enjoy reading about. However, I have never read 1Q84, and I feel like this book, as ginormous as it is, because I think it's 3 books rolled into one, 3 separate stories rolled into one, all existing in the same universe from what I know. It's such a massive book that I want to read it just to say that I've read it. I am sure that this book is beloved by many, or else, it wouldn't have stood the test of time. But I'm excited to read it. I'm excited to dip back into the surreal world that is Murakami's writing. And I think I can be critical of the way in which Murakami views and writes about women while still enjoying his surreal world. So, very excited to read this. The back says, "A love story, a mystery, a fantasy, a novel of self-discovery, a dystopian rival to George Orwell's 1Q84 is a tremendous feat of imagination from one of our most revered contemporary writers." This is one of those things. I feel like I just have to read it, no matter how I feel about the author. I think something I'm learning as I get older and as I read more books is that 2 things can be true at once. You can look at a piece of work with a critical lens and still enjoy it. I think there tends to be this attitude on the internet where if you critique something, you can't like it. Or if other people critique something, you can't like it, you have bad taste. I don't know if that's me just projecting, but that's something that I feel on the internet, that people are persecuted when they don't engage with media with a highly critical lens. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be critical of the things that we consume. However, I think, 2 things can be true at once. You can enjoy something and also be critical of it. And that's how I feel about Murakami. Long-winded explanation, but 1Q84, something I am prioritizing in 2025. The next 2 are interrelated but very different. I have Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Saadawi, and this is something I found secondhand at a book off, and I'm so excited about it. This was actually something I saw mentioned, I think by Jack here on YouTube, but I forget where I first saw this title, but it is a Man Booker International Prize finalist, and It sounds so cool. I read the back of it while I was in book off and got so excited to read this. It says, from the rubble-strewn streets of US-occupied Baghdad, Hadi, a scavenger and an oddball fixture at a local cafe, collects human body parts and stitches them together to create a corpse. His goal, he claims, is for the government to recognize the parts as people and to give them a proper burial. But when the corpse goes missing and a wave of eerie murders sweeps the cities, Hadi soon realizes he's created a monster, one that needs human flesh to survive. First from the guilty, and then from anyone in its path. With white-knuckle horror and black humor, Frankenstein in Baghdad captures the surreal reality of contemporary Iraq. So cool. Like, such an interesting way to paint war and suffering, and I am very excited to read this. So, Frankenstein in Baghdad. Next is also, I believe, a Booker Prize finalist, if I'm not mistaken, but it is Martyr by Kaveh Akbar. And the back of this says, Cyrus Shams, the novel's hero, is a young man grappling with an inheritance of violence and loss. A mother whose plane was shot down over the skies of the Persian Gulf in a senseless accident, and a father whose life in America was circumscribed by killing chickens on a factory farm in the Midwest. Cyrus is a drunk, an addict, and a poet whose obsession with martyrs leads him into the mysteries of his past, toward an uncle who rode through Iranian battlefields dressed as an angel of death to inspire and comfort the dying, and toward his mother through a painting discovered in a Brooklyn art gallery that suggests she might not have been who or what she seemed. Cyrus is guided on his journey by the choices of artists, poets, and kings, and delivered in the novel's unforgettable final pages to a world that teems with unforeseen wonders. Martyr is a work of gut-wrenching anguish and exquisite consolation, a book that sees into every corner of the human heart, that faces down shame and despair and emerges with a vision of humanity that is capacious and full of grace, an astonishing debut. Very excited for this one. Next, we have The Unbearable Lightness of Being. In 2025, I want to read more philosophical fiction, and I watched a creator popped up on my For You page on TikTok, and she mentioned that this was philosophical fiction done well. If I remember the creator, I will also put her video on screen, but she studies philosophy at UCLA, and she really likes this book. So I wanted to kind of expose myself a little bit, give myself a little taste, and see what threads I want to pull at in regards to philosophy as I read through this book. So the blurb for this one is, a young woman is in love with a successful surgeon, a man torn between his love for her and his irrecorrigible womanizing. His mistress, a free-spirited artist, lives her life as a series of betrayals, while her other lover, earnest, faithful, and good, stands to lose everything because of his noble qualities. In a world where lives are shaped by irrevocable choices and fortuitous events, and everything occurs but once, existence seems to lose its substance, its weight. Hence, we feel the unbearable lightness of being. A major achievement from one of the world's truly great writers, magnificent novel of passion and politics, infidelity, and ideas encompasses the extremes of comedy, tragedy, illuminating all aspects of human existence. Sounds cool? Very excited to start learning about the world of philosophy through fiction. Next, the ever so famous Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem. I am excited to expose myself to more Joan Didion. I have heard from one of my favorite creators on the internet, Melissa, that reading this specific collection of Didion's work is a way to shock yourself into getting your life together. I'm not sure if that's exactly the words that she used, but I am excited to feel my brain break open once again, and I've heard Joan Didion's writing can do that to you. So excited to read the personals, excited to read essays in general, and I'm hoping that this will change the way that I think, even if a little bit. The last book in this pile, but not the last book on my list, is The Essential Rumi. I am finally re-exposing myself to some poetry, and specifically Rumi, a poet that I feel like is not talked about on the internet so often. So this book is pretty much a collection of Rumi's work, and Rumi is a poet who was born in 1207 in Afghanistan, so this work is nearly biblical in the grand scheme of things, in my opinion. But I have seen excerpts of Rumi's poetry on the internet, and It feels so profound when I see small bits of it that I'm excited to read more of Rumi's poetry. I also have never really been a huge fan of poetry. I think the farthest I've gotten into poetry was through Olivia Gatwood's work, which is still excellent and wonderful, and I still love it, but I'm interested in learning poetry that is not part of the Western canon. So this is on my list currently. I also found this secondhand, which is what inspired me to pick it up. Super excited for this one too. If you can't tell, my entire list of books is, if I were to pick a theme for 2025, definitely translated works is on there, but also reading outside of the Western canon, reading from different voices around the world. There's a lot of surrealism in these works and poetry, which I'm excited about. So yeah, this is kind of what I have in my hands today. Coming in the mail though, because I know I said I wasn't going to buy any more books until I finished these, but I did purchase more books because, as I mentioned, I really want to get more into philosophy, and so I picked up a collection of books by Dostoevsky. So I am going to also prioritize Crime and Punishment and The Idiot. I also picked up my first work by Søren Kierkegaard, so those are coming in the mail also, but yes, I feel like this year is going to be a good reading year. I'm hopeful that I will stick to this list and not veer and be tempted by bright new shiny objects, as I so often am. TikTok is eating holes in my brain and causing me to overconsume, so I am sticking to this. You are here to keep me accountable, and I hope that this list has inspired you to read something new and different also. I will be updating this channel as I finish these books and doing more vlog style reading content because I want to challenge myself to read more during the work week, and I'll take you with me so that we can read more together. I hope I can inspire you to pick up a book instead of doom scrolling, because that is very much so what I'm trying to inspire myself to do. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you for joining me. I will see you guys next time.